Where'd Crystal go? Crystal, where are you? Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Guess I want to do her portrait too. She's got a really cool picture, black and white. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I would be so happy if I just did this every day and I didn't have to like do grades. I hate grades. I know it's horrible. I'm gonna get fired. And then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna get fired. It sucks. But I just if I could just make money just drawing every day just for fun, I would teach anybody who wanted to come along. I just need in revenue stream. It's Yeah, I've got Patreon and I just haven't set it up. I mean, I've got it, but I haven't really set it up and I really need to do that because I could offer, like free drawings and, things because you got to offer your patrons something. I do have Ko-fi. My daughter set that up for me, and PayPal, and also through the through Picardo. There's a little link that you can go to put stuff in. I need to get more aggressive about it, but who has the time? I don't have the time. I'll have to lose my job to be able to pursue all the possible revenue streams. You know what I mean? That would suck. That would suck, but it would be. Uh, would, oh yeah, white charcoal is good. Yep. Two B, 4B, 6B. Yeah, yeah, and then white. That's good. And a little kneaded eraser. Are you serious? Oh, you got to get a kneaded eraser. Oh, yeah, that's what it is. It's like this silly putty, exactly. But it pulls the charcoal out. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would like to change that problem. I think that that is endemic in our society. We have the tools, but we don't know how to use them. I want to do some kind of seminar. I'm going to try to do it through work, through school, um, where I do you heard me tell the story about the ham, right? Did, did, the story about the ham was that, I, um, I always cut the ends off the ham when I cook it. And why do you do that? Well, it's because that's always what my mother did. So I go ask my mother, why did you cut the ends off the ham when you cook it? And she said, well, I don't know. That's always what my mother did. So we went to talk to grandmother, and she said, that's what my mother always did. And we go to great grandma, and she said, why do you cut the ends off the ham? And she says, because my pan was too small. So it's like that is so typical of how a lot of things happen. They don't know why. Why do you do it that way? Because it was a compensation for something that. And I found, especially after doing that one demo with on pixel density, on DPI and stuff like that, um, which I did post, and I think I made it public even. People don't understand why. Okay, so if you go to Photoshop and you click on the color palette thing chooser, and it pops up and it gives you like 00FD A53, and you're like, what the frick is that? Hexadecimal. It's 16-bit numerical. Because if you are working in 16-bit, you have to have 1 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 A B C D E F. because you have more numbers than a 10. You know, you can't just, then you have a 10, then you have 10. And um, there was another thing. I was talking to my dad. My dad was here this weekend, and he's the whole reason why I even understand anything at all about computers is because he used to do mainframe computers back in the day, and I learned how to do soldering and circuit board stuff, and I could put in chips and expand circuit boards into more memory and stuff. We learned that I did that for work for a while because I worked through school, and I'm really pretty good at soldering actually. And it was all because of my dad that I even understood anything about how computers work. And his first company was called he started his own company. He worked for Data General, which was a big company for mainframes and stuff. And then he started his own company, and he had me do a logo. So here's the interesting thing. This is a computer core, and so this is binary. And I did this logo, this 3D logo of a computer core thing going, and there's two lines of energy because energy can either be on or off, right? So if neither one is on, it's just off, off completely. You turn one on and you get 0. You turn both on and you get 1. And so that's all the computer does. Zeros and ones, binary. Binaries are just on, off, on, off, on, off. It's like, so when you count to 10, you've got to go 0, and you go, and then you go 1, and then you go 1 0, and then you go 1 1, and then you go 1 0 0, and then you go 1 0 1, or whatever, and then you go 1 1 1. So that's how binary works. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, or maybe this is 0, I'm not sure. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So but the thing is, the computer can only go on and off, and it does all these numbers really fast, but we can't read it. So we had to create our own language to communicate with the computer that translates everything we say into just 0 1, 0 1 0 1 1 0 1 0, and it's a series of binary numbers that the computer can understand. I asked him about the 72. Why is it that computer screens are only 72 dpi? I think he forgot to answer me, so I'm going to have to ask him again. But I do know that everything is in multiples of 8. So if you do an 8 by 8 texture, 8 times 8 is 64. So for instance, when we did old Nintendo stuff, it totally made sense. You have 4 palettes of 4 colors each for old 8-bit games, okay? And that's all you got at any one time would be 4 palettes of 4 colors, 16 colors. And that's the 16-color old-fashioned computer monitor, the old CTR monitors, which, by the way, were all 800 pixels by 600 pixels. So that's why 800 by 600 is kind of like standard procedure, right? So when we did this old 8-bit art, the first color was always transparent so that you could have sprites like outlines, creatures that had an empty space so that you could draw a little character running across the screen without a square around him, right? And then, so you only got these 4 colors, and you would have to build these characters out of 8 by 8 squares. And so you might have a sprite that was 16 pixels wide by 24 pixels tall. And if you wanted to make it like with a red shirt and blue pants, then you had to use a different set of palettes. So you had one palette that could cover the top part, and then you had to make another palette with the blues in it that could cover the bottom part, and you'd have to at least have a couple of colors in there to share so that you could do a blend. that's how I did it. I mean, it was just I was thinking about how weird that was and how hard it was to figure it. But it was like a big puzzle. It was just like a game, you know. It was like making art was a game, and it was super super interesting. So now you've got the idea of okay. So if you have 8 by 8 or say 16 by 16 um, image, and you want to make it twice as big. So it's a 1 inch square, and now you want to make it, instead of 1 by 1, you want to make it 2 by 2. Well, that's not doubling it, that's quadrupling it. So now this 16 becomes 32 by 32. So 16 times 16 is something I can't think off the top of my head what it is now, 32 by 32. The next stage up, double it again, and you have 64 by 64 for a texture. And then you double it again, and you have 128. So that would be the biggest you could go. And then if you want to add colors, it's like the original computer screens could only show 16 colors. So you can still see that on Photoshop. If you click on the color chooser, you can actually select web colors, and it shows you the original old 16 colors that you could use on the internet. Now, of course, you can use millions of colors because the bandwidth is wider and then the power is greater. But people don't know why. Why is it like that? And I think, because I'm kind of a weirdo, I think it's super interesting as to why it is like that. So I want to do a little seminar about why everything is in these weird, 16-bit numbers. So you have 8-bit, 16-bit, and then 24-bit, and then 32-bit. So this is basically, every channel has 8 bits. I don't know why, it just does. I can find out. I'll find out before I do the seminar. So this would be the basic, this is actually black and white. Do you remember the old Game Boy Game Boy, the original Game Boy that was in black and white, right? So you have one? So 8-bit would be like 8 shades of gray. You have a value of gray, only black and white, different shades of gray. 16, you get 16 colors instead. So then you get, the basic colors. And then the 24-bit, you get thousands of colors. I could be wrong. I could be totally like missing the point on this, but I'm working on it. And then 32-bit means you have 3 channels of 8 bits. So you get a whole red, a whole green, a whole blue, and then you get 1 channel of alpha. And that essentially means that you can now have anti-aliasing around your figures or your characters or your letters or whatever, because the alpha channel does 8 bits of value or 8 scale of value. It can carry the value, so you can actually make an outline like a GIF or a ping. It has a transparency, but you only do transparency in 32-bit. You can't do transparency in the other versions. Anyway, I can't believe I had to work with that stuff as an artist. No wonder only technical people went into games at first, right? Because it was just crazy, nuts, weird. So having the one fellow ask me about DPI, DPI could be used for printing purposes, dots per inch. And you don't want to print anything less. Pardon? Oh, well, CMYK and RGB, 2 different things. You want to hear that? Let me explain that. Okay, so RGB is light. CMYK is print. And RYB is pigment. So 4-color printing, or CMYK, is what the 4-color press uses to print realistic looking colors. And they do it you have a channel of cyan, which prints X, this much cyan. You have a channel of magenta, which is like pink. You print that. then you have a channel of yellow, and so this is the yellow, and then you have a channel of black. And those together will give you the illusion of full spectrum color. So that's CYMK. So when you're doing full color printing press, you have to have 4 plates. Each plate, each channel, if you look on your Photoshop, you have channels, and there's 4 channels. Each channel has these colors. With RGB, you get 1 channel of red, 1 channel of green, 1 channel of blue, and then a channel of alpha instead of black. And the amount of color that you add, like you could have 55 red, you could have 70 green, you could have 120 blue, and you would get a certain color. And I don't know off the top of my head what it is. And the alpha channel would give you a border, an outline, a way to mask it off. So every color is decided by red, green, blue, which is light. So here's the thing about that. Light is additive. Pigment is subtractive. Print is an imitation of pigment. Okay, so when you add red, green, and blue together in light, what do you get? You get white. When you add red, green, yellow, and blue together in pigment or in paint, what do you get? Black, or kind of an icky gray, dirty gray sort of thing. So the really interesting thing about primary colors as opposed to light colors is that what you see is the light is emitting on the wavelength to your eyes from whatever light emitting object you're using. So the pigment is actually, each of these absorbs the light waves, and the light waves that reflect are the ones that you're seeing. So in that regard, if you think about an apple that's red and the light is hitting the apple and bouncing back off to your eyes, all you're seeing is the red light waves because the object does not absorb the red. It absorbs the yellow and absorbs the blue, but it reflects the red. So in actuality, that object is everything but red, because red would absorb the light and it would not reflect as red. Isn't that crazy? I just think it's so interesting. Okay, probably too much information. But I would like to do a talk on that because I find that being able to understand that as an artist, the difference between light emitting and light reflecting, is really critical. So in light reflecting, you can mix your paints. Red and yellow make orange. Yellow and blue make green. You mix light, if you're a lighting technician, if you're doing theater, or you're doing movies, or you're doing games, you mix red and blue together, you get magenta, hot pink, I think. I could be wrong. I always get them mixed up. That's why I use Photoshop, and I just use the sliders. And then I can find out exactly what color it is. But I also know that it's, number, comma, number, comma, number, and that would describe the number of the size of the red. And then you can give it a hexadecimal number that will put it on display. All right, I got to finish this portrait. Quit fooling around. It's already like 11 o'clock. I'll do Cheryl's portrait tomorrow. I mean, not Cheryl. I mean, Crystal's portrait tomorrow. So let's put in some shadows. I get too much into the tech. I'm really interested in the technology of it, even though I'm really more interested in the way things look. But I'm super fascinated by the way you can make things look like a certain way, manipulating that information. I want to read Newton's book on color. Isaac Newton did a whole treatise on color. Color theory. What? Yeah, I'm interested. I would be interested to see what that's about because I wonder if that's going to be if they're going to talk about the difference between pigment and light emitting and light reflecting. I would be interested to know if that's involved. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think peop, people people are afraid of science, and they shouldn't be because it's so practical. Once you understand how something works, that's why when I teach Photoshop, I always like to say, you know why it happens when you do this? If you know why you get this effect when you do this one thing, then you have the power to create that effect anywhere you want to, you know? And I think that's super. Yes, kneaded eraser because okay, so here's the thing with paper. If you're using good paper, the paper has a texture, right? And you're drawing on the texture with your pencil or your graphite or whatever across the top of this texture. So it's knocking off little bits of material into the little crevices. If you're doing it with a light touch, I always say feel like you're stroking, pretend you're stroking a kitten, make it really gentle and light. Because if you push too hard, what you end up doing is flattening out the little wave here, and the if it's graphite or charcoal, it ends up not only gouging the paper but also making especially with graphite, they're flakes and they lock together and they make this really shiny surface, right? And no matter how hard you erase it, you'll never get it up. But if you do it with just the little, and without damaging the paper, then you can lift that stuff out of the holes without leaving a mark behind. You see? So think of stroking a kitten and work on try to hold the pencil a little bit on the side. I did notice that you tend to do this. I don't know, I haven't seen you draw. I mean, you can show me, but I think you tend to push and gouge. So try doing this and try building up your texture like this with little circular movements. Try to not allow any pencil line to really show when you do your scale. Just try it. I think I remember you did all the different pencils, charcoal pencils, and all the different graphite pencils on the same scale. That really, yeah, that really, you don't, yeah, you don't want to do that. Of course, they're dark, but the harder the pencil, you have 2B, 4B, 6B. 2B is the hardest, 4B middle, 6B is harder than that. But you could do a whole scale with just one piece of charcoal if you are careful to like just just treat it ever so gentle and just slowly just make it you can do this in front of the TV or talking to somebody, you don't have to think about it. The next square you're going to do, you do this, but instead of going over it once, maybe you go over it twice, maybe you go over it 3 times. I'm not pushing any harder at all. I'm just layering it on more. And then the next one over, instead of going over it 4 or 5 times, I might go over it 6 times. And so once you get to the point where you can't really go over it anymore to make it darker without pressing and destroying the texture, well, then you move up to the next level of charcoal, and that would be, hey, shh. I know, it smells like a skunk. I don't know if there's a skunk or somebody smoking pot outside. Then you can switch up to compressed charcoal, which is a lot more robust. See, now I've got 4 levels of value, but I did not damage the paper. So I can still take my kneaded eraser and pull out the value without leaving a mark. See? That's what you want to get. And then the same way the other direction. I'm on toned paper, so I would actually I would leave the middle piece empty and then start lightening it. So we go light and then we go lighter with more, you know, layer it on a couple times more. This is like a little bit light there, and then go in with the pastel or the compressed white charcoal, and then you get a really solid white. So there's my gradient. Well, I screwed up my gradient by removing the middle bit here, but I can add that back in. So just have to go over it a few times like so. And then this is go over it a few more times. But I'm still being gentle with the paper. Now, there does come a point where you want to damage the paper because you want a certain effect. But you better be darn sure that's what you want before you do it, because there's no going back, right? Which is an interesting idea about art in general. With digital art, you can always undo, and you can always make a copy and do something different, or you can put on an adjustment layer. So one of the great things about Photoshop is you can do this non-destructive editing, right? Where you can do all kinds of stuff to the image without ever touching the original image. And that's great, but it also like kind of is like forever. You could be constantly doing versions of it forever, save off a copy and do a different version of it, or try different things, or turn on and off layers. You can never make a commitment. You never have to make the kind of commitment that you have to make if you want to, like, really press hard on the paper and make it shiny on purpose, because you can't go back on that. You destroy the paper. There's only one shot. So you never commit to it and you never finish it. You know what I mean? You want to make it so that that can cripple. I think that cripples people as artists. I found that I trained as a traditional artist, and then I was doing video games for a while, and then I went back to working on traditional material, and I did this drawing, this really nice drawing of a figure a woman modeled for me, and I hadn't done anything with a foreground, and I didn't know whether I should fill it in with a value or leave it white. There was no, I had to choose. I had to make a commitment and deal with it, whatever it was. If it didn't work out, either make it work a different way, by trying something totally different, or by throwing it out and starting over again. Sometimes you have to cut your losses and run, you know, and that's perfectly acceptable. But it's a risk you have to take because but it allows you to make a decision and actually deal with the consequences, which I think is really important for an artist and artistic development. Otherwise, you're making endless versions that go nowhere and end up being nothing. You know what I mean? That's a big difference between, I think, art, visual art, and music. Because with music, you can write a song, but you can always change it the next time you play it to be different. Although if you record it, then you're setting it in stone, and it is what it is. But anyone could reinterpret it because it's a performance, and it's time-based. It's not static, whereas visual art is static, unless it's a movie. But then, even then, you could explore that in 100 different ways and come up with different answers every time. It's super fascinating, don't you think? Yeah. It opens up a whole other realm of thought that I think people overlook nowadays because it's so easy to just make a copy and do something different. This is why I really feel that traditional art is will always be important because I'm doing this drawing and there'll only be one of these. I mean, I can scan it, I can post it, I can print it, I can do all kinds of things, but there'll only be one original. There'll be millions and millions of copies, but only one original. You never get only one original with a digital work. Although I've had people say, "Well, I sell my digital work and I promise to destroy the file after I've sent them the yeah, well, somebody posts it, you download it, you can use it again, you can manipulate it in another way. So it's not that valuable. And I think that traditional art with the one version, you can do another version of the painting, but that's going to be different. It's going to be slightly different. If you paint it again, you paint it differently, a little bit differently, it's going to be, variation on the theme. And musicians do that sometimes. They'll change a composition and do a variation on a composition, right? But they still have the original version is always going to be what it is. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just babbling at this point. But I think it's a fascinating idea. And I really get interested in the deeper concepts of that. Okay, so I'm trying to just develop. I'm not going to use color because I don't want to go there. I'm just going to use value. You want to try to develop your value so that you're dealing with edge and not line, because there are no lines in nature, only edges. The end of one thing defines the beginning of something else. I love drawing on the tone paper because I like being able to go a highlight and depth with its darkness and highlight at the same time. Go both directions and not be stuck just trying to bring everything down or bring everything up. Although I've drawn on black paper, I really like drawing on black paper. It's really fun because then you're thinking backwards. You're thinking reverse of what you normally think, and that it's like the poor man's chiaroscuro. You pull out the whites, you pull out the lights, develop the lights before you develop the darks, and it gives you another insight. The blending tools. This one I'm not going to. I'm going to let the stroke of the pencil define the value. When I'm doing something that's highly polished, then I'll use the chamois. So, like if I wanted to make this like pitch black, really deep, deep black, I would definitely rub it in, put a lot of charcoal, a lot of compressed charcoal on it, and rub it in, make it really, really dark. But then I would have to smooth in everything else, and it would be more like a pastel painting rather than a charcoal drawing. So you have to make your choice about what kind of result you really want to have. Do you want to have a pastel painting or an imitation of a painting or even a painting? Or do you want to have a drawing that shows a little bit of the mark, a little bit of the line? Well, you want to vary your stroke. You also want to do it with a certain amount of mm, what am I trying to think of the word? Intent. You want to have an intent. You want to know and do things on purpose. You don't want to just do them because you can't help it. You know what I mean? You want to make the decision. You want to be the creative force, not just part of the flotsam and jetsam, and just buffeted about by the wind. You want to be in charge of the ship, right? You want to steer the ship on the sea of creativity. And yeah, you're going to have to deal with the waves and the wind and the vagrancies of the environment or whatever, but still you make the decisions. And if you know how the waves are going to go, or you know what properties the waves have, then you can work with it to then get where you want to go. But if you have no idea how the currents work or how to tack, I don't know how to tack, but I know that it can be done. You move the sail a certain way to go into the wind instead of it just pushing you along. If you understand it, then you can use it and get to where you want to go. So I think understanding what you're doing is 90% of your ability to be creative. You know what I mean? I don't know. I like thinking about this stuff. I like talking about this stuff. It makes me excited. Makes me feel more, I don't know. It's like stuff I've always thought about but didn't really get a chance to talk much about. People don't normally talk about it because I don't know, they're scared of it or hmm? Shy. Yeah. Oh, well, that's really cool. So you've had a really good experience with the whole company as a whole. Well, I hope it I hope it sticks. I really do. Because I much prefer working for a nonprofit organization, one that is more interested in education than in money. It's very exciting. A lot of the professors are really excited about that too because they don't like being driven by the bottom line or by the shareholders. Yeah. No, no, it's fine. It's fine. I totally get it. That's exciting because we don't really get to on us us people out here in the trenches. We don't really hear much about what's going on on that side of the world. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm? We're out of wet food, yeah. No, not too. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go feed my cats, but I think I be blah 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 blah. All right, it's late. I should stop. I don't know if that looks all that much like her. Honestly, I think I might have softened. It's likeness is hard. It's hard to get a likeness, but let me flatten it out, and then maybe it won't look so weird on the screen. Yeah, I think I took it a little too wide. I need to lengthen it a little bit. It's so subtle likeness. It has to be so specific. We're so hardwired to see faces a certain way, and if they don't match up to our expectations, it throws us off. So I'm gonna have to work on that a little bit more. But this is good. I mean, it's fun doing this. All right. Well, Kyle, it was great having you. And Black and White Junkie, who are you? I can't hear you if you're talking. I know that it looks like you're talking, but I can't hear. Oh, cool. Neat. So, maybe you can get your um are you one of my regular students or did you just kind of like wander in? Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. I've seen you here before. Oh, neat. Nice. Okay. Cool. I'm probably going to do more of these. I like the Picardo streaming a lot better than the GoToMeeting because it's a smoother thing.